Welcome to Pure Hustle Podcast. I'm Mike.
And this is Orlando, and we're on episode 426, and this is a themed episode.
Yeah, this is our special Thanksgiving Black Friday episode because as you guys are listening to this, I mean, you got one more day until Turkey Day. Maybe not everybody, if you're from another country, if you're on the other side of the pond, you might not be celebrating Thanksgiving, but we are very thankful that you guys are all listening to us today as you're probably getting ready for your nice turkey meal or however you're going to celebrate. And then we've got that amazing day as resellers it's one of those almost like a holiday for us, Black Friday, or is it? And we're going to talk about that today, how Black Friday has potentially changed over the years.
Maybe it already happened.
That's right. So
okay, we'll talk about that. No, and it is interesting because I remember years ago, and it's funny because people always you guys talk about the past a lot, and we're going to talk about the past a little bit here because we need to provide. You okay? Did I throw you off by saying that?
I swallowed wrong. I'm all right. I took a drink, and by the way, my drink. If you're watching on YouTube, my cup is like a green. Oh, it's like I'm not doing it at the moment, but it's like a green, and so with my green screen, sometimes it like becomes invisible. It's weird. So.
Oh, I see it. It was a translucent right there.
That's right.
Okay. No, so I thought you were like, no, not again, Orlando. Don't talk about the past. But I think it's important just because it kind of not kind of it really affects us as resellers. Black Friday used to be that thing. I remember, back I would say before 2021, before even 2020, before that era that we had where people couldn't leave their homes. I remember like people would make YouTube videos on Friday, on Black Friday, and they would drop them on Black Friday, right? Because they would buy so much stuff and they'd have such a quick turnaround, right? And they would move stuff and they would get a lot of clicks because everybody's all on that Black Friday train going, there's so much money to be made right now as a reseller. And we're talking about retail arbitrage here, in case you're wondering. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. There's a little bit of eBay retail arbitrage too. That's something that hasn't been talked about much. For me, it was primarily Amazon, but I got to tell you, Black Friday was it. Now, it has changed a lot, but I just want to talk a little bit about how things were. One of my...
Real quick, before we get started on that, what is your personal, maybe not reselling wise, but like your personal memories, maybe growing up as you got older with Black Friday shopping? Just give me one story, like your favorite Black Friday. Like, did you wait in line for a big TV? Did you get it? Did you not get it?
Honestly, as a kid, my family just didn't. Like, it wasn't a thing. Now, I will say before being a reseller, it was like when I had small kids and stuff. I remember going out there because there would be like these certain video games. Like I remember Epic Mickey 2 on the Nintendo Wii. Like it was like $20, right, instead of like the $60. And I remember waiting in line, getting there super early. I remember getting there. It was like 4 a.m. I was at the line at Walmart, and I remember Walmart had this thing where you had to be in line and like you couldn't rush in because all the crazy news stories that happened the year before, but still people rushed. I remember going everywhere, like trying to find that video game. And what happens is people would grab like bundles full and just throw them in their cart. And then they would decide, I don't want this anymore. And they throw them to the side. So I do remember one time like spending 2 hours going through the store, looking at every aisle. And I ended up like in the furnishing aisle. And in one of the shelves, like underneath, I saw like peeking out of the bottom of the shelf, like this Nintendo Wii logo, and I pulled it out, and it was the game. I'm like, yes, $20. So I remember that. I remember that with my kids. Like we would grab as many toys that were like on discount at that time, and it was a good time. I mean, it was fun. You bring the whole family. It was one of those things that it was very, very anticipated. My own growing up, like Black Friday, I don't remember it getting that crazy, or maybe we just didn't do anything. But I remember my own, immediate family, we definitely would plan. I remember getting my kids the Nintendo DS when it came out. Not the DS, the 3DS. But it wasn't the 3DS; it was the 2DS because I don't know if you remember, Nintendo tried to do this whole 3D thing on the DS, and it kind of like failed. So they brought out this 2DS, and I remember. The night before Thanksgiving going online and picking those up for like $40 a piece. Actually, what's funny is my kids played with those, and then 2 years later I sold them on eBay for like 2 or 3 times the price that I paid on Black Friday. So yeah. I guess if you're talking about go ahead.
I was gonna say you never did the camp out overnight though Like bring a chair and wait in line
not
for
that. I did that. The only time I remember doing anything like that was when the Nintendo Switch came out. I remember going to Best Buy, waiting for a long time, and waiting to get your number and being able to go in and purchase it. But no, I don't. I never did the overnight. The overnight stuff like that just was too much for me.
Yeah, I mean, I remember as a kid, like always seeing that people, as soon as Thanksgiving dinner was done, people were already lining up for the next day.
Yes,
Stores hadn't even closed yet. Like there were stores that were still open on Thanksgiving, like Target or whatever, would be open on Thanksgiving a lot of times, or whatever store, Best Buy. So the stores hadn't even closed yet for Thanksgiving, and they're like people already in line for the next day. Like setting up their chairs, getting everything ready. They've got their parkas on, and they've got all the stuff set up. And I just remember thinking, like, man, what is worth it? What is it that they're gonna get? And I mean, I get it. I get if you're like, I'm gonna get a TV for $50 or something like that, and it's normally a $400 TV. You're saving $350 to be one of the first 10 in line or something like that. But it was pretty wild, like just seeing that. But I don't know if I see that anymore. And part of that could just be the shift, and we'll talk about it some, to the online that people are doing, and Black Friday just starting so much earlier. Now it's like November. Some of it starts in October. It's like early Black Friday sales. But I don't know if I see as many people lining up, and now stores are even open earlier. It's like Black Friday starts Thursday night, for a lot of things.
Well, not
it's
anymore.
They don't have the doorbusters like they used to.
But going back real quick though, I do remember back in 2017, maybe 2016. I remember going to Walmart here, and so here in San Diego, in the East County, there's this Walmart in the city of El Cajon, and it's a 2-story Walmart, but their escalators are always broken. So I'll never forget going there. And like all the good sales were on the second floor, and I remember going up there, and people were like fighting, like straight up drag out. Like I remember this lit Christmas tree that you could buy, where all the lights were already on it or something. It was like $25 instead of like $150. And I remember one guy grabbed it, another guy grabbed it, and they started tussling. They got on the ground and they started fighting. And I'm just sitting there watching this, going, "This is crazy." And then the worst part about it was you got all your inventory, but then you couldn't leave. So you waited an hour and a half in line to get out of the store, but then you couldn't leave because the escalator stopped working, and there was only one elevator to bring people down. And so I remember waiting another hour and a half, and it was like 3 hours. And I think I picked up a few toys for my kids, but it really was not. It was just not worth the time. And I think that's why things have changed.
Yeah. So let us know in the comments below, what is your best Black Friday story? Does anybody maybe have a story where they actually got one of those physical altercations over saving 25 cents or whatever it ended up being? Or did you watch it? Did you see it? Did you get a good score? Like, what's your best Black Friday story? Let us know in the comments below. And then maybe after this Black Friday is over, we might get a chance to share some of those as we reflect on how this one went.
Okay, I do have a random story, and then we'll get into what we're talking about. When I used to catch shoplifters back in the day, like at Macy's and Target and stuff, I'll never forget a Black Friday at Macy's, and I saw a guy put on 30 belts, like just belt after belt after belt after belt. And it felt like I was kind of like in the Bourne Ultimatum a little bit, because there was like thousands of people in the crowd, and we had to like locate him and find them. And then I remember that ended up in a big fight and stuff. So Black Friday is also a huge opportunity for people to steal, because there's so much chaos going on. And I remember we'd have at least 40 people processed. This was back in the day in California when you used to be able to do citizens arrest on people as a security person. But yeah, Black Friday used to be crazy, but it's changed a lot. But I remember as a reseller, like it was wild. One of my stories that I remember is going to a Walmart and looking for those Ryan's eggs. Do you remember those? Remember Ryan? Remember Ryan's World? I think he still has a show. I see TikToks where people are.
What is he like 14 now?
Yeah, no, I think he's like 60. I don't know what he is, but he has like a mustache and everything. Like he's way too old, but he's still making those videos. And I remember this was like at the end. I remember remembering how this was.
You remember remembering?
No, well, yeah, I do, because I what I remember is going with my two boys. I rented a van, and I'm like, we're gonna pick these up. We're gonna make a ton of money, and they were going for like, I don't know, it was like 50 a piece. And I remember I probably picked up like 150 that day. And we filled up the van, and I was so pumped. And then going on Amazon, and the starting price was already $90. Like that's where it topped. So at $90, there's no profit on Amazon, right? Because you have to ship it and then you have your fees. And I remember with those 100 and whatever eggs, I was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I just did this. So I spent probably 30, 40 hours of labor to break even. Like all it was fun. It wasn't fun that I had to do that, but that's the only thing. Like
you got the high, like the adrenaline high, right?
I got.
Yeah.
But I remember when that happened, it was kind of one of those reminders of like, okay, things have changed. But, then I remember, a few years ago, there were these like Mega Constructs Pokemon sets, and you could buy them for like 20 and sell them for like 100. And that was pretty good. I remember myself at that time, the Side Hustle Network, like we used to talk back and forth over the DMs on social media. And it was funny because all the resellers like that knew each other would be like, hey, I found something. I bet you can't figure out what it is. And we would play this game trying to figure out who sourced what, right? Because, the death nail in social media is on retail arbitrage is once somebody shares it, it's over. Like that's done because the barrier to get to it is very easy. You just have to go to a retail store. So I'll never forget. Yeah, I'll never forget going store after store, picking those up for $20, selling them for like 100, 150. But you had to be fast at that time. Like you had to do merchant fulfilled. There was no FBA, and you had to flip it quick because everybody has the access to the same deal. So even if it's not posted on social media, there was a limited number of items that you could flip online to make a money on from a Black Friday deal. So I remember that. There's a lot of stories about that. I remember Reezy Resellers had a whole thing on Nerf guns. I remember doing the Nerf gun thing too. This was back in the day when there was a Toys R Us. And you go into Toys R Us and they would have crazy deals and you'd pick up like 50 Nerf guns. This was back when it wasn't that tough to be ungated on Amazon. And you would make a killing. But the key thing, and we'll talk about that today too, is when you source on Black Friday back then, you had to sell quick. And I would say in Q4, anything that's retail arbitrage right now, the way things are, you need to sell quick.
Yeah, well, let's jump right into that. Let's jump into our topic here. So one of our first things we have on our list here is it used to be a major source. Black Friday used to be a major source and major avenue for retail arbitrage. So what do you think? You think it's not so much? It's changed a little bit?
Yeah, I do. And I think the biggest change, I think people need to be careful, especially if you're watching the old YouTube videos. Like sometimes the recommended pulls up a video. You need to make sure you take a look. Like, is this a year ago, 2 years ago, 4 years ago, 6 years ago? Because it used to be back then, before like all the big cook groups, like you had everybody. I would say would have an equal advantage as long as they're willing to get out there and hustle, right? Because with cook groups, right, the information goes out, and let's say there's 100 people in the cook group, which right now cook groups have like thousands of people, okay? But, even if they have a few hundred, that's all you need to kill a listing on Amazon. That's all you need to kill the sell-through rate on eBay. At the same time, too, now we have bots, right? So if you're unaware, if you're watching this video, you get motivated, you're like, hey, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to source this. If you're going to a store that has an online presence and people are able to pull information from that online presence, getting stuff to do retail arbitrage is just brutal because you can't compete with the bots. Like the bots get the info quickly.
Yeah, the bots make it hard, and even just the way people are buying, like it is a benefit and a detriment to resellers that more and more people are moving to online shopping, right? Like the benefit of it is you potentially have more chance of selling your items, whether it's on eBay, whether it's on Facebook Marketplace, whether it's on Amazon, because people are used to shopping online. The hard part is a lot of times now you are competing against other online sellers, and that could be Walmart, that could be Target, that could be Amazon itself, right? We always talk about Amazon getting on a listing and crushing a listing because they're going to prioritize themselves. They're going to have a lower price. They're going to get it out faster. If Amazon's on the listing, you kind of got to wait until they sell out before it's, now the FBA stuff going out. Now, the hard part with that is the downside is all these other companies that people can buy from, and people are shopping online now, and with advertisements, unless you've got a very unique thing that you're able to pick up from a store and people are looking for, if it's the stuff that's being advertised on TV, I've even mentioned like the Amazon wish list, not wish list, the Amazon like catalog. So they used to have the Toys R Us catalog. Now there's the Amazon catalog. Now that can be a very helpful tool because a lot of those items do end up, going up in price. My kids have Christmas wish lists, and a lot of times we have to remove things from them because it's like when we put that on the wish list, it was $30, which was a decent price for it. And then now that it's getting closer to Christmas, all of a sudden it's up to $120, and I don't want grandma to accidentally buy it thinking, well, this must be like a really good toy that they want, when it's really not worth that. So there is benefit to using those catalogs, but then the main purpose of those catalogs a lot of times is to show you what is trending, what types of toys, what types of items are trending. But it is so many people now are shopping online, and they're going to prioritize places like Amazon and Walmart as opposed to third-party sellers on eBay, unless, again, it's a very unique item. So you're going to have a difficult time as more and more of these companies are moving to selling straight from online or shipping from the store. And even with things like drive up pickup, right? Like we've talked about that as being a benefit. Like when it first started, hey, as a reseller, now you could order a bunch of things. You don't even have to get out of your car. They're going to be, bringing that straight curbside pickup. They're bringing it right to your car. But the problem again is that changes the way people are buying things. Now what you used to have to kind of go and look for, now anybody can just put in their cart. They don't even have to get out. So it definitely increases competition.
Well, and, speaking on that, the idea that, the deals, right? The best deals were, back in the day, were on Black Friday, right? It was just that Friday, right? There was only one way to get to it. You had to go to the store. And you had mentioned about people showing up after Thanksgiving. There was a time in my life, I think for about 5 years, where we planned Thanksgiving early to go to the Black Friday sales on Thanksgiving Day. I'll never forget, we would eat at noon and be done by 2:30, and then at 2:30 we already started planning hey, at 4 o'clock we're gonna go to this store, 5 o'clock we'll be here, 6 o'clock we're here. But now it's not like that, right? And things have changed because now you have to be able to see the sales that are happening way advanced. I would say right now Black Friday sales are even happening early October. I even saw some.
Yeah. It's like Black November, late October.
Yeah, something like that. But before we talk about that, hey, you want to talk real quick about My Reseller Genie? My Reseller Genie is a great tool that was made by resellers for resellers. And I hate using the passive voice of was made because they are actively improving on it, actively working on it. A while back, I had an issue where some data wasn't showing up, and I went to support, and they got back to me within hours. That's the beauty of it. Sometimes you use these other bookkeeping services, and you're just talking to a bot, or you're talking to somebody in another part of the world, and people don't get back to you. My Reseller Genie, they have a great support staff. Paul and Faith are always getting back to you. They're fantastic about it. And so if you're looking for something to import all your eBay data, your Poshmark stuff, your Mercari items, being able to, not just for taxes, but to track things, I definitely recommend My Reseller Genie. If you can use our promo code, Pure Hustle, you'll get 15% off the first month. Again, that's promo code Pure Hustle. Get 15% off the first month. And, right now, before Q4 really gets crazy, actually, it's kind of crazy already for me. I would say you want to make sure you have some bookkeeping like My Reseller Genie to keep you organized. So it's funny talking about sourcing early. I was sourcing for Amazon back early October already. It was just crazy. I never thought I would be ordering this early, and you kind of need to, because sometimes the best deals are early on. You think they're going to show up later, but it's actually early. And so I actually, I was looking up some things. I'll give you one example of stuff that I was not sourcing to sell on eBay. But for example, TVs, there were some great deals on TVs. It's crazy that you can get a 70-inch TV for under $400 now on Black Friday. That's crazy. Yeah. Remember when those things used to be
TV. Yeah, measure your TV you measure your TV in feet now instead of inches. It's getting crazy. But yeah, it's so amazing. I kind of look at it like this too. I remember, I don't know, you never wrestled in high school, did you?
In college only, on college.
Okay, so with wrestling, I remember I never actually wrestled during any competitions because I was always injured from football season. But I like to pretend I was a wrestler. I practiced and all of that. But one of the things I always remember is people would complain about the whole weight cutting. Why, everybody cuts weight, and why don't you just wrestle at the weight you actually are instead of cutting weight? You do all these tricks to get down to this really, really low weight. Same thing with boxing. But here's the reality with something like that. Like if all it takes is one person to do it, right? One person decides that they're going to cut weight. Now they have an unfair advantage. So then everybody else has to do it. And I feel like that's what's happened with something like Black Friday. You used to be able to have all the sales on Black Friday itself. People would wait in line. You have the doorbuster sales. But then all it takes is one company to go, you know what? We're going to do our Black Friday sales the week before or a couple days before and get all of that shopping in now. And then people have already spent their money and they're not going to go to you. So now everybody else has to. And that's why it's kind of pushed back further and further to the point where, I mean, there still are some doorbuster sales because I think there's that like tradition to it that some people will hold. But yeah, Black Friday stuff has started so much earlier. So you do need to, if you're going to be doing any retail arbitrage, you got to be on the lookout much earlier for that kind of stuff. And again, I think one of the benefits, and this kind of moves into like how things are going now, and you know, Orlando, we can go back if you want to go back some too, but how things are going now. One of the things I would say is with Black Friday happening earlier and people buying all their stuff online, you're going to have a hard time making a lot of profit off of just those doorbuster deals. Now you might get lucky enough to like, hey, I was able to buy a, you know, whatever, some special video game console that was on a special sale if you're the first 10 in line, and I made $100 or $200 off of it. Like that used to be what everybody would do with like the PlayStations, right? Like PlayStation 2 came out, PlayStation 3 came out. You wait in line, you got a good deal on it, and then you could flip it during Christmas time and make a bunch of money. And in a lot of ways, those days are done. But what you can do is remember that when people start spending money, I mean, I've noticed this in my own life. I'm a pretty frugal guy. I don't spend a lot of money most of the time. But once I start spending money, I've started buying birthday gifts and Christmas gifts and all the stuff I've got going on this time of year, then it's like, yeah, I'll take my family out to dinner. We buy dinner. Oh, let's go get dessert. And then, oh, let's buy this. And I'm spending, oh, I wanted this online. And I start spending money. Once you start spending money, you keep spending money. And so as a reseller, you got to remember, even if you're not making money off of those doorbuster style Black Friday sales like you used to, sales are still going to pick up if you've got the right items in place. So you still want to be competitive in that sense, have low prices on items in your store, the lowest prices you can have them and still be able to be profitable. Because once people start spending money, Black Friday and this week, as we get closer to Christmas, is still going to be a very profitable time, even if the doorbusters isn't where all of that profit is.
Yeah, and I would say, you know, speaking of eBay, most of everybody that listens to us sells on eBay primarily. You know, my experience with eBay, especially right now, has been the idea of you need to always accept offers, right? As long as it's you know, like you said, it needs to be profitable. You know, because I've gotten some lowball stuff. I also get people messaging me like, I can't believe you're selling it for that much. Do your research. And I'm like, bro, you've only sold 100 items, okay? So, but what's happening is, you know, eBay wants to feed you more sales, right? Because in the end, they make more money. We've said this many times. But I also believe that once you set yourself in a place of having a certain amount of sales, you got to keep those sales numbers up, right? And that's kind of what has been happening to me since April, where things died this past April. Took forever for me to get back to normal, and now things are back to like Q4 levels. But that's because I had to get to a place where I was like, hey, I'm gonna sell stuff. Like, I don't care. Like, if it's at 60% of what the price is, I'm gonna sell it, right? Sometimes I would take 50% and I'm gonna sell it. And eBay likes it. And I do believe, and I have no direct evidence, but the algorithm wants to make that happen for you. So keep pushing those sales, sell things fast. And it's the same thing with Amazon. Like, if you find stuff, right, a Black Friday deal somewhere, just remember there are also thousands of other people that have found that same deal. So the fastest you can sell it, the better it is for you. Now, this is, to me, if you want to do retail arbitrage, this is probably, I think, the best solution that I can offer is go to the stores that, like we said, that do not have an online presence. So I'm going to name some of them because everybody knows about them. It's not a secret anymore. But like, if you go to Ross, you go to TJ Maxx, you go to Marshall's, you go, so there's no more Tuesday mornings, but you go to a store that's kind of like a Tuesday morning. I think somebody had mentioned like Ollie's or something like that, or any of those stores. Like, that's, I believe, where you're going to make your better profit margins. But also you got to keep in mind that being that I have shared it, right? And we have a decent sized audience, but we don't have like a huge audience like people that have like 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. Understand that it's going to be highly competitive, but the beauty of those places, right, is they don't always stock the same inventory, right? There was a time when it was kind of like that. I'll never forget, back in 2019, I would go up and down the coast of California and go to Ross stores like crazy. And those were amazing. I remember Sell Quick Ship Quick would come along with me, and we would go, and if one of them was like this Mario RC racing thing, and you pick it up for like $30 and sell it for like 150, and all the stores would have it. But the reason I had that advantage because no one knew about it unless you walked into that store. Right, but here's the beauty: if a reseller has gone into that store and they found that item, they're going to clear the shelf. They're going to buy them all. So what that means is that information is not available to the next person going in there scanning information. So if you're able to somehow, I've done this with multiple products. If you're able to be like the first one at a store to find something that's very profitable, or maybe you're the second or the third one, and you're able to clear that shelf, you need to keep clearing shelves. Like, you cannot stop. You can't go like, well, I'll go sourcing for more tomorrow, right? So one of the big things I had mentioned back in the day during that era where we couldn't leave our homes were those Fisher Price stationary bikes, and that were for kids. They're like Pelotons. And I remember when I saw one at Marshall's, and it was the Marshall's over like in Carlsbad or something. And I remember I was like, wow, like this is $50 and people are selling this for like $200 something. It was $220, I remember. And I'm like, I'm going to pick this up right now. I picked them up, and by the time I got home, they all sold. And I'm like, I got to go to every store because once this gets out, like it's going to be a race. So I went to Carlsbad, I went to Encinitas, I went to, I just started going all through San Diego. I started booking hotels. I got a van. I started going everywhere. And I had the advantage. I remember, I'll never forget going into the store in Visalia. Do you know where Visalia is? That's like in the middle of nowhere. That's like what is that one road? Like if you're going to LA, you don't want to, you're obviously going the 5, but it's the 152, I think. There's one road you don't want to go because it just winds the entire way. And the only way to get to Visalia is that road. And I remember showing up in Visalia and they had 9 of them. Right? So instantly, right, I was going to make tons of money. But the reason being is that no reseller had approached that store yet. Right? So I realized, hey, I need to buy all of these, and then I need to go to every single store I can. So if you find something, if you're out there at a Ross, you're at a TJ Maxx, you're at a Marshall's, you need to clear that shelf. Don't leave one behind. And I'm putting me at a disadvantage. But I'm just being real with you guys. Don't leave anything behind, because once that trail is out there, you're going to find that competition. So what happened to me after 3 or 4 days of this, then I started going to stores and I'd be like, hey, do you have any of these available? Or they're like, oh, somebody just showed up 2 hours ago and bought them all out. Oh, somebody showed up last night and bought them all out, right? So now I'm just chasing, right? I'm trying to get to a store before another reseller or resellers get to it. So make sure that once you find that thing, you execute, and you execute fast, because you don't know how long you will have before that dries up. And the other component of that too is you don't know how long it'll be till eventually Amazon gates you. And I don't know if you guys are, many of our followers are on X, but recently on X, all these Amazon sellers this last week experienced Amazon gating them on inventory that they already had sold hundreds of, maybe thousands of items, gating them and telling them, hey, you have 2-3 days to sell through your inventory and you'll no longer be able to sell this. Right? So that's another reason you got to move fast, because sometimes Amazon doesn't care. Like, I don't know what it is. I don't know how it happens, but there's 2 things that Amazon will do if you're doing this on Amazon. Number 1, Amazon can gate you. Number 2, Amazon can force you to sell at a certain price. It's called their fair price policy. It used to be back in the day, you could pick up something for 10 and you can list it for whatever price you want. But what determines the price of an item now, it used to be, it was like whoever listed it the highest, that's where it was, and then Amazon adopted that. Now it's, I don't know what Amazon does, but Amazon has determined the price. So, for example, I have an item that I was selling really well for about $300, and now Amazon will not let me list that item for over $150 anymore. Like, I'm just stuck. And so I've just been selling through that item because I have no choice. I've sold a lot of them at a loss. So you got to sell them quick before the I don't know, the nefarious Amazon algorithm finds out what you have, because things can change.
Yeah, no, it's good.
So I know I've spoken a lot, but I've had a ton of experience on this, and even now doing some retail arbitrage. This is kind of my adoption. My adoption is go to places that do not have these items. I mean, they'll go to places that do not have these items online, move quick on them, sell them fast. And remember, if you're doing Amazon, it doesn't have to be like eBay. And even if you're selling on eBay, you need to be willing to accept 20% profit, maybe 15% profit, net profit, what I mean, net after shipping, after fees and everything. You may even need to do pay-per-click on Amazon, which is also the same thing with advanced promoted listings. On eBay, you may have to do those things. But if you want to sell those Black Friday items, right, or even if they're not Black Friday, even if they're now Q4 items, and you want to make this like a very profitable Q4, you have to do those things because you will be stuck. Right now, I have items that I purchased 3 years ago that I'm finally now selling through. Finally now. And I lost thousands because I did not sell them fast enough. All right. Do you have any more you want to add about Black Friday? Because this is like a weird, like 2-part kind of episode.
Yeah. So this is the pre-Black Friday. So, and again, if we've got any hot deals, obviously we're not going to share them right now because we haven't at the end of this Q4. But we'll have a post-Black Friday wrap up to see how things went, any scores, our feedback, and what we experienced. But again, let us know in the comments below how do you think Black Friday is going to go this year, and do you think and maybe if you're watching this after Thanksgiving, you're watching it after Black Friday, how did it go for you? We are eager to hear. All right, we got some hustles of the week, right?
Yes, we do.
All right, here we go. Come on, hustlers. It's the freaking hustle of the week. All right. Hustle of the week. We love our hustle of the week. This is a good opportunity for us to share some of the huge scores that our listeners have experienced, as well as some of the scores that we've had recently. So our first one comes from one of our Discord, I want to say almost like celebrities, just incredible in our Discord, always posting, just an extremely active member. So we've got Reed and Sue from Discord, bought a UFO collection of books for $50 that has already been paid for itself many times over. So here's one example. Sold an amateur book titled Matrix 3 on eBay for $250. That's crazy. It's part of what inspired the name of the Matrix movies. That is pretty bonkers. Yeah, that's got some history to it. If that inspired the name of that of the Matrix series. So that's a field that you can definitely make a lot of money in, especially with you've got a lot of almost more mainstream interest in things like UFOs and the supernatural. You kind of, I feel like, started with shows like. What brought it to mainstream was things like Joe Rogan, right, talking about these things, started getting it out there to just the everyday person to hear some interesting takes on the supernatural and on potential aliens and things like that. And so that has definitely created an interest. So if you can pick up any kind of paranormal or supernatural or UFO type stuff, you also got to be careful. I mean, I personally, I've sold a couple of decks of tarot cards, and then now I kind of stay away from that. So I do believe some of those things, contain a certain amount of, there's reality, right? There's stuff out there we don't necessarily know about. So you got to be careful with what you're willing to sell. I think somebody even had like a weird, almost Scientology type book that was a hustle of the week that we did a while back. So I mean, there's definitely money there. So congratulations on picking that up. $250 for one book. Bonkers.
Yeah, and the cover of it was crazy. There's like aliens and there's like all this stuff on it. Yeah, I gotta tell you, those books they sell, right? And for example, I have some what do you call that? Bigfoot books. I have some Bigfoot books that I picked up. My
son is obsessed with Bigfoot.
Okay, so these are like the thing with Bigfoot books. Some of these are self-published books, right? Mm-hmm. But they're not like Amazon KDP. They're just KDP is stuff where you self-publish and Amazon will ship it. These are books that were made, but there's only a limited number because it was just like the guy wasn't looking to make a ton of money. He just wanted to get the info out there. So like some of these books that I have are worth like $80 to $100, right? And I only paid like $2 or $3 for them. But they sell, right? Stuff like that because they're limited quantity, right? Because a lot of publishers aren't going to pick up these books because they're like, we don't know about that. But, but people still want to get it out there. And so there's an opportunity there for some of those out there books.
Yeah, no, for sure. One of my favorite podcasts. We don't normally do like shout outs and stuff on here to other things that aren't reselling related. But one of my favorite podcasts is the Haunted Cosmos, and it's a couple of guys who talk about some of those paranormal things, but they do it from a Christian perspective, and it's huge. The podcast keeps growing and growing and growing, which shows that this is a field that there is definitely a lot of interest in, for sure.
Yeah. All right, so here's an email. This comes from Katie from Gmail. Said, "Oh, there's a hustle of the week and there's a question for us." And I do like the question there. Says, "Hi there again. My recent hustle of the week is thanks to one of your older podcasts." It's so crazy hearing older podcasts, right? Like where you and Mike were discussing taxidermy. So I was at a garage sale recently where I spotted 2 large stuffed deer head wall mounts that measured about 38 inches each, very large. After listening to your podcast, I figured I'd give it a shot and chalk it up to my reseller education. It's always good, right? Sometimes even if you have a buy that you're going to struggle with, it's good for the education you'll get from it. Katie then says, the seller was asking $50 each, and since I knew I could easily resell them for that, I went ahead and took the risk and purchased them both for $100. They sat in my death pile for a few weeks. I wonder how did those sit? Did they sit like mount head up? Like I just wonder how they sat for a few weeks, but I finally got them listed. I always start high, so I listed them at $899.99 since there's nowhere to go but down, huh? It took about 3 weeks to sell, but I finally accepted a best offer of $750 plus shipping. They were paying to ship, but I was willing to put in the effort for that price point. And you know what? That's great about with taxidermy. Like, it is a pain to ship. Just to give you guys a heads up, it's not taxidermy. You got to make sure that things don't break. It's not like a vintage toy that like if something breaks, you can maybe crazy glue it. With taxidermy, you can't do that. So I always have to get like a bag of peanuts, and I just use all the bag of peanuts to stabilize the item. But before I do that, I bubble wrap it. Then I use peanuts. Then after that, I put in a box. Then I seal that box. Then I float that box inside another box. And if you want to know what that's all about, we do have a video on how to float a box. But it is time consuming. But you got to think about if it took Katie, let's say it took her 5 hours to pack that thing to ship, she still made over $100 an hour, right? She made probably like $125 an hour after fees. So it's worth your time to pack that item. So said, they were paying to ship. I never would have even considered taxidermy if it wasn't for you and your podcast. Thank you both so much. I am a homeschool mom, and reselling has been such a blessing for the past 4 years, and your podcast always provides new and relevant tips and information. Oh, thanks so much, Katie. I always love hearing from the homeschooling community, right? Because I always feel like those are the off the grid, like making it happen, especially in the reselling world. All right, so here's a question comment from Katie. Says, this is also just a random question comment, but do you know if eBay has ever considered making the app to where if a buyer sends you an offer and you counter offer their offer, but the buyer declines, you can go back and offer the amount that you originally countered? Does that make sense? It seems once you counter and they decline, that's all she wrote. Just curious your thoughts or knowledge on that.
Yeah, so, I mean, that seems like that should be a pretty cut and dry thing. Now, there are ways around this. A lot of times you still have the ability to send an offer, right? There may be a person you can send an offer to, but you also have their information. You can just send them a message and say, hey, sorry we couldn't come to, a price at this, but you originally offered me $50. I wanted $60. I'd be willing to take the $50. Are you still interested? And then you could work it out that way and potentially send them either make the listing at that lower price, letting them know if it doesn't give you that option. Now, a lot of times you have multiple chances for counteroffers, right? Where they decline, it can go back and forth a few times. But yeah, you could get to a point where you run out of those back and forth counteroffers that they don't counter back, and then you kind of feel stuck. So it does seem like there should be like an automatic where you can counter back to one of their original prices so you don't potentially lose that lead.
Yeah, and I would say eBay, I think, does listen to our podcast. They've made some changes in the last year where we talked about it. Don't know if we directly related to it, but yeah, eBay, that would be great. Like if somebody declined, it'd be awesome if we could just send like just the offer again, right? Or there's some way that we can like not end that communication. Because right now I will say the one frustrating thing is you ever get those, the ones where they end up, you accept the offer, but it disappears. And the reason it disappears is because it's still open out there until the person pays, right? But it would be nice if like you could still send that offer to other people, right, while that person has accepted it. So some way that you can get that done. But I appreciate Katie the question. She also finished with, sorry this was so long. Appreciate you both. Happy holidays. And that was not a long email. That was not a long email. Really appreciate, Katie, all your support and everything. And hey, by the way, I did want to tell people, like, thanks so much for the recent reviews. For things have kind of slowed down. I know people get busy, but before we get into our next hustle of the week, I wanted to share a couple of them, because I think they're relevant to where we're at. Hey, by the way, we're almost at 800, so if you haven't yet, jump on over to iTunes, give us that 5-star review, let people know why you listen to the podcast. And so this comes from vintage_wild. It said, great show, not all teaching. There are plenty of times they tell it like it's happening. Some folks can't handle the truth. And then it was like the emoji, like laughing. You guys are doing great. And I appreciate that. I appreciate somebody acknowledging that that's what we do on the podcast. Like, yes, we try to share what we've been through, but part of that is just telling it how it is. And sometimes people struggle when we say things are slow, but that's just the reality. Like, I'm never going to lie to people. Like, this is kind of how reselling works. So thank you so much, vintage_wild for sharing that. This comes from Ipsima Mama Bear, or something like that. It said, I've heard so many strategies for increasing profitability in my resale business from Orlando and Mike. They are clear that it is not a do no work and get rich kind of business. The tone of the podcast is informative but relaxing. It is my go-to for my hour-long commute. So, hey, thanks so much. I really appreciate those, because, it's funny, as Mike and I go through different seasons of life, and we're going to talk about this here in a little bit when we talk about what we're thankful for here on this podcast. Our podcast is ebb and flowed, right? We went through from, the beginning of the excitement where Mike and I were like, yeah, let's do this, right? I'm going full-time, you're going part-time. And then things were really great and taking off. And then things took off even more during that one era. And then after the era, things kind of wind down. But we've continued to, produce episodes, continue to share what we're going through. And a lot of you have been there from the beginning until now. And some of you have joined us mid-journey through there, and you're still with us. But we always want to be grateful and tell you guys, hey, thanks so much for tuning in, even through the ups and downs of reselling. I feel like we're on an up right now, on an upward trajectory. I know at least my sales have been, and so thank you guys. All right, we got another hustle of the week here.
All right, so our next one comes from another very active member from our Discord. So we got Kiola, says, this is a bolo / hustle of the week. So keep an eye out for Paratech tools and products. I didn't know what this thing was, but it was heavy and seemed like a specialized tool. I picked it up and gave it a look over and put it down and walked away from it. Someone else picked it up and offered the seller $2, for which he refused. I decided to go back to it and look up the brand. Turns out it was a professional firefighter tool, and pretty much anything from Paratech sells for good money. I paid the seller the $10 he was asking for it. I listed it for $225 and took a best offer of $150, and it was a Paratech Pry-Axe fire rescue tool, forcible entry tool. This was pretty cool. The pry bar extends the handle to a full-on axe. I almost wanted to keep it. Yeah, that'd be something to be kind of cool to keep for sure. But man, yeah, that's a good bolo as well, right? And that's one of the cool things about our hustles of the week is a lot of times they're bolos. I can't tell you how many times we have people in the comments or on our Discord say, hey, I picked up a Canon T6 because I heard it mentioned on a hustle of the week, and I set it as a Facebook marketplace alert, and I found one, I sold it, and I made some money, or something like that, where they heard something on the hustle of the week, they start to look for those items. Even if you're not actively searching for those items, just hearing them, now you've got this brand name, Paratech. So you see something, you see Paratech, you know that it's going to be some money there. So yeah, that's one of the reasons we love our hustles of the week. So Killa, great job. I think that's a fantastic, and I think your gut instinct was right? Something's heavy, you're not sure what it is. That's like, those are green flags. Hey, I should look this up.
And the fact that, paying up for $2 to $10 is not really paying up, right? And you got to sometimes be willing, right? Two things. When I read that story, I was like, number one, the reseller should have done some research, right? Or maybe they weren't a reseller. Maybe they were just somebody that was looking for tools, right? But always do your research, especially when it's something like unique like that. And second of all, if you do your research, like $10 to turn into $200 or $150, like that's not a big deal, right? Like, why wouldn't you pick that up? And I know there's some resellers that like will not pick anything up unless it's like under $5. And I would say no, like if you're gonna make a good amount of money on it and there's great sell-through rate, it's worth you paying up for that item.
Good.
All right, Mike, where are you on the hustle of the week this week?
Yeah, so handful of sales, some pretty decent stuff, mostly bread and butter things, but the one that I'm excited about, and I have mentioned this before, this story a few times on the podcast, but a while back I bought a bunch of AT&T signs. Like, they must have gone on like outside of the stores because they were like metal signs that have like brackets for mounting. They're not like something that would traditionally be sold to go inside of like a man cave. And they're from 1995. They're old school AT&T long distance signs, and I bought a whole bunch of them. I bought a ton of them from this one guy at a garage sale. And I think I didn't even pick up all of them because there was just so many, but I picked up a whole bunch of them, and I tried to get them down to a really low price. And if I remember, I paid $5 a piece for them, and they've been selling pretty consistently. I sell one every couple of months for $40, and I just had one sell the other day. So it's one of those things that I'm just excited to sell them because I paid $5 a piece, and I'm already well into the green on them. So every time one sells, they're easy to ship because they're already in a box. So I literally just print out the label, stick it on, a little bit of tape just to make sure it's secure, and send it off. I've never had a complaint. I've had one time where somebody said that it had like one of the edges was like messed up or something, which was no big deal because they were willing to take like a $10 refund on it and keep the item. So I just keep making money on this, and this goes to show that like bulk buys like that, sometimes it could take a few months, maybe a year before you're in the green, but then once you're in the green on it and they just keep selling, it feels great.
And you took them to Texas with you because I remember you sourced those in San Diego, right?
Yep, I did. I've sold most of them at this point. Like I've only got a handful left. So, but yeah, they did travel. They've traveled all over the United States.
There you go. All right, my hustle of the week. I'm ecstatic about this one because I was able to turn a terrible situation into a good situation. I went to this garage sale and they had all this vintage like San Diego Charger stuff. And I remember like all these shirts, it had like $20, right, on a price tag on each of them. Some had $30. I remember going, I could probably negotiate if I buy them all. So I picked them all up. There was about like 40 shirts. And it was a lady whose mom was trying to move and trying to sell all her stuff. And so I asked her, I say, hey, if I pick this all up, can we make a deal? And she's like, probably not. Like they're where they're priced at, but go ahead and grab some. So I did, and then I asked her, and so think about 40 shirts at $20 a pop. It's like $800, right? But I was, and she asked me, what were you thinking? I was like, I was thinking like 150, right? Because I'm buying them all, right? And man, I got to tell you, like she was mad. Like she's like, you're trying to take advantage of us. There's no way I'm not selling to you. Like we're not going to happen. And then, usually most people would walk away, but you always learn about, in that book, Never Split the Difference. We keep bringing that book up, that you got to empathize with people. Right. And so I kind of said, well, I'm trying to, I need to sell these at a profit. How am I supposed to do that if the price point's at this price point, right? Chris Voss always recommends in that book to ask, how am I supposed to do that? And she goes, oh, so, I see what you're saying. And I was like, yeah, I was just looking for a certain price point. Maybe we can't work anything out right now with these shirts, but maybe in the future. She's like, okay. She's like, keep looking around. So what could have turned into something really bad where I could never buy anything. I started walking around and I picked up a few items, and I picked up all kinds of stuff. Like I picked up like old like football magazines that I picked up like 30 of them for $20, and I've already made like hundreds on those. But the best item I picked up, again, this is after the whole like blow up that happened. What happened 2 weeks later. So on the way out, I bought a few things. She gave me a deal. And I left my business card, and I said, hey, if you're ever wanting to sell those shirts and no one picks them up, I'm willing to buy them. 2 weeks later, I get a call, and she's like, hey, come on by, like around noon. And I showed up, and somebody bought the shirts before I got there. So I was like, oh, like that's what I wanted to buy. And so I was like, hey, I'm here. I know you guys are wrapping things up. Is there anything that you have not brought out that, you're eventually looking to do something with? And she was like, yeah, we have a lot of stuff in the house. And so took me inside the house because the sale was all on the patio. Took me inside the house, and there was a bunch of stuff in boxes. And so in one box, there was all this random like San Diego Chargers memorabilia from like the 70s and 80s, like pennants and shot glasses and stickers and you name it, like all this old stuff. And I was like, hey, are you willing to sell any of that stuff? She's like, yeah, I don't care. And at the bottom, there were 2 bobbleheads. One of them looked like an elephant stomped on it because the face was literally like smushed and cracked. And the other one was like in like great condition, like no cracks, no issues. And I didn't think anything of it. I didn't even know they're worth money, but I know that bobbleheads could go for, decent amount, sometimes $50, $80, right? And I was like, hey, what are you thinking on those bobbleheads? And she's like, $2 a piece, whatever. Something like that. It was like $2 to $5. I remember exactly what the number was. And I was like, all right, I'll take them. It's worth it. And I even took the broken one because sometimes you can sell the broken one. So a few weeks had passed. The people had moved. I have no way of getting a hold of them anymore outside of, when they reach out to me. But they're no longer in San Diego. And I was like, you know what? It's time to list this stuff. And so at that point in time, I went on WorthPoint and I started looking it up. And I found that one of the bobbleheads has sold for like $300 to $1,000 in the last 2-3 years. So I was like, what? This is crazy. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to list it high and it looks cool. It's going to be a great decoration piece in my house. If it doesn't sell for a while, that's okay. It looks kind of cool. But I have a lot of decoration pieces throughout my house. So I listed it. And so it's been a year and it just sold. So remember, I paid like $2 to $5 and it sold for one of them sold, the nice one, sold for $424 plus shipping. And I was like, yes. I remember when that sale came up, I was like, because it's been a while since I've had a huge sale like that. Most of my sales have been like $20 to $50, like $424 on a bobblehead. So here's the lesson to me is like, hey, there's always other items that you can find, right? Especially if people are trying to clear out their house. Second is always try to turn things around, right? Just because there's a fallout doesn't mean it has to be the end, right? You can make things happen. And last of all, make sure to do your research because I could have easily just looked at eBay. At that time, they didn't have TerraPeak. I could have done the 90-day comps. But I instead went to WorthPoint. Now you can go on TerraPeak and do 3 years, and I was able to sell it for good money. So anyways, that was my hustle of the week.
Nice. I like it. All right.
Hey, before we move on, should I talk about our Patreon real quick?
Sure, yeah.
We're going to close that out. Hey, so some of our items here have come from Discord. And our Discord is something that is available to you if you join our Patreon. So just for $5.55 a month, I think we are the best bargain out there in the reselling space, maybe in the entire Discord space outside of free. For $5.55 a month, you can join. And so if you haven't joined yet, then make sure to do so. You can go to patreon.com/PureHustlePodcast or go to the link below. We just actually did a live where we had people from our Discord call in. We did like a call-in show. And so if you want to check that out, part of that is being in the Discord. So for $5.55 a month, you can help join us. There's plenty of Pure Hustle podcast community members there, from retail arbitrage to vintage sellers to antique dealers, people that sell books, like all kinds of individuals in there. We have resellers that like Mike and I are like, wow, one day we'll be as good as they are. Like, they're just phenomenal. So check them out. If you haven't been following us on social media, you can follow us on all platforms. We are Pure Hustle Podcast, except on X, we are Pure Hustle Cast. And as always, you can shoot us an email like Katie did earlier at purehustlepodcast@gmail.com. That's purehustlepodcast@gmail.com. Or give us a call, 619-738-1170. That's 619-738-1170, and leave us a voicemail. And as always, if you haven't smashed that like button yet, just make sure to smash that like button. And if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube, come on over to YouTube and hit that subscribe button.
That's right. All right, so now moving on to just quickly here, we want to share, since we're in the Thanksgiving time of the year, some of the things we are thankful for as resellers. And, we have entire episodes where we talk about, what makes reselling great and how reselling has changed our lives and how its skills can translate into so many different things. But, one of the cool things about reselling is no matter what's going on in your life, no matter what stage you are, whether you are got a full-time 9 to 5, whether you have lost your job, whether you've got some health issues, whether you're a full-time reseller and you're actually picking up some other work, maybe going back to a 9 to 5, no matter what stage of life you're in, reselling is something that's always there. It's not something that has to be an all or nothing, right? It's something that is not just the skills you've learned, but if you've built up an eBay store, you've built up your Etsy store, you've built up whatever platform you're selling on, and you've got some inventory, you have the know-how how to do some reselling, you've got that reputation and that credibility because you've got the store set up, you can always increase or decrease reselling in order to fit whatever stage you are in life. Like, reselling is one of the most flexible side hustles. There are some other ones, like you could be an Uber driver and say like, well, it's only a couple times a month where I've got some free time, I might as well do some Uber. So there's some other flexible things, but I don't think there's anything that's as flexible as reselling that is as profitable as reselling. And so no matter what stage of life you're in, whether you're a young person just getting started out in life and trying to make some extra money to pay for your college books, whether you're retired, whether you are, no matter what it is, reselling has been beneficial to both Orlando and to me. But so many of our listeners have talked about whatever's happened in their life. They've been able to either keep reselling or reselling has been the thing to get them through. So we're really grateful for just the opportunity to be this many episodes in, 426, I believe, episodes in to Pure Hustle Podcast, and we're still talking about reselling. We're still talking about hustles of the week, and we're still talking about bolos, and we're still talking about great, crazy stories from us and from our listeners. So it has been an incredible thing. I'm super thankful. As we're moving into Thanksgiving, I don't think I could say how thankful I have been for reselling.
Yeah, and I think about that. Like, even when we started the podcast, like, all our kids were super small, right? Some of your kids didn't even exist yet. Right. I had one kid go from, junior high to being in college now. Right. And during that whole time, I was able to resell. Right. And Mike, you've been able to move from San Diego to Texas and you're still reselling. Right. I've been through, different things going on in my own life and I've been able to resell. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity to resell. I'm also grateful for the reselling community. Grateful for everybody in our Discord. I've learned so much from people on the Discord. It's one of those things that Mike and I thoroughly enjoy about the Discord is that Mike and I created the Discord not to be a place where it's like Mike and I share like our secrets on the Discord. Like, it wasn't about that. It was about creating a community of other resellers that can go in, and whether Mike and I are on the Discord at times or not, there's other people in there that are experts that have that knowledge. And so it's been great to have that reselling community. They're available at the Discord at all times, right? If you want to go in there and you vent, or if you want to go in there and you want to share ideas, if you talk about bolos, hustle of the week, talk about shipping, and the reselling community has been pretty awesome. And I would even, outside of the Discord too, like Mike and I had this great opportunity starting Pure Hustle Podcast back in 2018, and now we're in 2024, and we've learned so much and made so many friendships to this day. I have some friendships that started as reselling friendships, and now I hang out with certain people. We don't even talk about reselling, right? It's kind of like our jobs. Like, it's kind of like what we do. But we can always talk about it if we need to, but our friendships have gone past just talking about reselling. So that's been great. And I'm just really grateful for that. And I'm just grateful how reselling has changed our lives, right? The fact that we have an opportunity to, if Mike and I need to pay certain bills, we can find ways to make that quick money, right? Sell things, put them on sale, go on Whatnot, whatever it needs to be. If we need to save up, right? If we need to save up for, maybe we want to go on a vacation or a trip like that. I know for myself, it's been great because I've been able to crank things up because I have a son that's in college and I'm able to help him as he tries to pay for college and so on. So reselling has most importantly given Mike and I a lot of time freedom, right? Instead of having to pick up some part-time job or having to submit ourselves to something where like we're only going to make an hourly wage. Now we can do something that we can spend that time to go source, to list, to end up being profitable. So in this Thanksgiving time, we just wanted to end this podcast on a reflection of what we're thankful for reselling. Hopefully you're able to do the same. And if you're new and you're like, hey, how long can I do this? You can do this for a long time. You can do this as long as you want. If you're an experienced reseller, a lot of you can resonate with what we're talking about here. So want to thank everybody though that listens. We are incredibly grateful for our audience, for tuning in, for going through the ebbs and flows like I talked about before of our reselling journey. And happy Thanksgiving, everyone. And with that being said, make sure to be real,
be relevant,
and be reselling. Peace.
Hustle Podcast guides our quest, learning tricks to be the best. On eBay we make our name, reselling dreams